Well, hello everyone. Here, good early mornings, like for Sunday morning. You have right here is like it also be is like for Saturday night and all, and or early Sunday morning. But you have right here is like for almost 2:30 here on a Sunday, the August the 23rd, and basically what you see right here is I went ahead and include right here is that some drawings right here of talk about like if this was right here, it could be example right here, me and along with like sitting in front of it with the tutor and knowing about that for the most part is knowing that that if we're going to be working with a teacher or tutor, some type of anybody, if it was related to a class work, or if it was anything that's related to any type of documentation or anything like that. But knowing about is like talk about say for fail though is like knowing that for the most part is like with the word fail, and knowing about that we may hear that a lot of times about is like with fail that some that may we may use it for many ways, and one of those ways could be it's like yeah, they say that well they're gonna say that a lot of times you'll fail to show up for an appointment, fail to respond to a message, to a greeting, you'll fail to turn something in, you'll fail to to pay a bill, whichever it is, and a lot of times with fail, that more likely could mean being that more likely be a number of things. But then one of those things could be is that with fail though is that one of those things could also be is like with fail though, if whenever that if something gets canceled, or if it gets delayed, canceled, or postponed, does that usually mean that it failed? I'm like knowing that from according to some of our understanding is knowing that if you made it to if you made it to an appointment with the tutor, and then the next thing you know, it's like you meet up with the tutor, and then all of a sudden it's like that they go over the paperwork with you, and then they talk about it's like an exam for what you got doing, and then some source of information, of course, that they got collect from you, or it's like from whoever that they got keep in contact with, knowing about. I'm like, can you show me this or show me that, something like that, if it's related to any assignment notes or anything like that. But then on your hand, that knowing about for the most part is that knowing about is like talk about say with fail though, that whenever we use the word fail, a lot of times, like if we're referring to that knowing about, I'm like really for the word fail, that it seems like a lot of times it seems like it's a mistake almost every time, that knowing about you didn't do something, or you didn't show up for an appointment, or you didn't turn something in, you failed. Oh, you failed. You failed to do that. You failed this or you failed that. So a lot of times another word besides failed that I guess that they also could look at is like for incomplete, and a lot of times that goes by saying about it's all highlighted in red, to where that all highlighted in red, that knowing about that really that for the word fail is that for fail improvements, that who's really what you call brave enough to knowing about, realizing about that for whatever we learned, it's like if it's in class or if it's at work, it is that a lot of times the word fail makes us look bad, such as a situation that went on to where that if you fail to turn in a paper, that like a lot of times when anybody say that if they were to fail something, they get all mad, upset, and frustrated to the point where they're like that a lot of their other plans that they wind up canceling something, or they get mad about something and knowing about more time of study, more time of study, and then on your hand too, that knowing about that for like so for fail, and most of us have seen that before, to where that with fail though, that knowing about that like I mentioned before, is knowing that some that may say that that whole part about failing though, that if we where like try to change this from an F to an A, and I'm like, well, they don't really look like an A. It looks like to me like it's like a few zigzag lines going up or something like that. But let's just say that you have right here is a fail. And knowing that, if anybody has ever noticed that a lot of times if you do get a failing grade, then that I know sometimes that they have it to where that the grade report would maybe show up something like this, an F plus or an F minus. And either way, if it's a D minus or a D plus, is knowing that, well, you still didn't pass, you still failed. But then on your hand, and knowing about right here is knowing about if most of us were to do our study, and knowing about really about the whole part about failing. Whenever if it's teachers or if it's students, and knowing about whenever they use the word fail, that is like talk about it's like the type of habit to where that for how we use fail, such as irresponsible, if it's not keeping up a task, you're not following directions, that type of stuff. The stuff that may make somebody look bad on your hand too, but don't know about is like so far as with the most mistakes though goes by saying it's like, yeah, well, you failed to provide the locker combination. I'm like, you're supposed to provide the combination so that we can get it unlocked, or you're supposed to turn in a paper, that type of stuff. Let's just say the situation were to go by saying that if the tutor were to give you a slip, and with the slip right here, that the slip of paper, it could be about maybe one or two of them, but let's just say that you have right here is a slip of paper, and then they give you like a code to where that you got to type in, key in for like if it's in the classroom or on a job or something like that they give you something, and then you got to turn in or something like that, and knowing about, yeah, well, you didn't do it. Okay, well, there's a grade. That can hurt the session or something like that, or, you didn't turn it in to take the test. Well, okay, well, you failed. You failed to turn that in as well. But a lot of times it seems like that some that may say that that they use the word fail as such as, you didn't do it. Oh, well, you got some stuff that's missing. And on your hand, knowing about, I'm like, well, that knowing that a lot of things that more likely that may look bad on somebody, and knowing that if you were in a classroom and then the next thing you know, it's like, yeah, people are pointing the finger at you because of the fact about that, yeah, well, you failed to show up for the meeting, or you skipped the meeting, or you skipped the finals, so you failed to attend the class, to take the final exam or something like that. So it's like knowing about, I'm like, really about some that may say that, yeah, the way that people may word it, such as for fail though, that even if we do fail, it seems like, well, it's not the end of the world. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, I tell you one thing, that knowing about if there's another synonym known for, like, say, besides not the end of the world, or it's like if it's not anything related to the fact about you are suspended, or you are grounded, that type of talk. But let's just say though, at the situation where it'd be like if you were to fail something, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that some that may get real upset about it, and then other things as well. But let's just say the situation where it goes saying that, well, you gotta study more, you gotta work more. Like, and I did study, I did work more, I turned into my assignments, and I still failed. So it's like knowing about the whole situation to where somebody where it be like, well, on the hand, and knowing about, you just gotta be patient with her too, and knowing about is to give it a try. And like how many times, after 4 times that I came real close to passing. But let's just say though that on average though, that if anybody were to have to retake a test, or maybe retake an exam, or if it's to redo something, and just thinking about it, is like that, really it seems like that nothing works the very first time. And knowing about, we may say get real upset about that, because on the other hand too, that knowing about that for most of us, that a lot of times that whenever something fails, it just seems like that well, I did that right. I turn in my assignment, or I provide the information that was asked for, but then it still failed. So if it's between paying your tuition and as well as paying a bill, as well as turning in our assignments, and a lot of times it seems like that if the situation were to go to by that. If you were absent from class, or if it was anything to do with maybe deadlines, trying to meet deadlines or anything like that on assignments, or something like that. But let's just say the situation were to go by is like, if somebody were to give you a paper to turn in, and then knowing about, I'm like, that is like for the deadline that you turn it in, you right at before is like right on the deadline from that certain day of the weekend, and the next thing you know, it's like that you failed to meet the time from whenever it was supposed to be turned in as well. So it's like a lot of times that knowing about is like failed, that maybe that it could be about maybe 2 minutes late. 2 minutes is better than 2 days, but then on the other hand too, that I'm like, for 2 minutes late. Mention say for if it's 2 minutes late, and then on your hand, it knowing that if it could also be like maybe the wrong if something went wrong, such as that wrong assignment, wrong week, something like that. Your wrongness, if it was the wrong assignment, wrong week or something like that. It's like, or something that caused it to fail. But let's say that I have went right in here is wrote right in here of knowing about like the red and the green. The red and the green basically means is that knowing about that so far as for great success, for great success. For great success, so far as excellent, if you want to call it, maybe for excellent, but then on the other hand, that knowing about is like for what are the definitions for, is like knowing about for that whenever something passes and whenever something fails. But talk about say for fail improvements is knowing about how most people react to knowing about if they wind up failing something. And then it's like that they get all mad and upset, and then they say that they're going to spend more time, working, doing their studies, that type of stuff. And a lot of times, most students that may say that makes them feel bad compared to everybody else, because everybody else, it's like that they wind up, they get a medal or they get an ice cream or something like that just because that they passed the class, or that they get that I don't know about the type of award. I might talk about like the type of credits though is knowing about that if there's a situation to where that if you wind up passing something and then you go on to the next level, but then you get that behind. I'm like if you wind up failing, you may have to do something again, that type of stuff. But just knowing about at the meeting where to be like for who's brave enough to speak up, and knowing about that the mistakes that more likely that we made from before, and just realizing for the future, knowing about that there really is somebody else maybe in that grade level to where that maybe if they want to go ahead and try to take that same subject and then learn the same skill, and just knowing about really about that knowing about that the things that you have failed and in the past, about a year ago, you may have failed the test for that reason or something like that, failed the exam, you failed to turn in the work on time, and you may say stuff like, I'm different now, I do more studies, that type of stuff. But knowing about, really, about, for the definition for, say, for word brave, and knowing about, if we were to say brave, it's like so far as a person willing, and I looked this up in the dictionary, which I was like the definition more likely I want to use a person willing to show a person who is willing to show. I'll go ahead and write this right here. It's like a person willing to show their when a person who is willing to show their if I can go ahead and see here, is willing to show their interest. Say if you call it, it's like for interest, as well as for how for a word for brave, such as for no fear. I can use for no fear, and as well as knowing about another word for brave is knowing about a person willing to to show their interest, as long as a person who tries to show others something that they think that will change, that would improve, that would change the way the way for the skill. And knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that I can maybe come up with maybe a few other examples as well. But let's say that if for the word brave right here, talk about is like a type of person. It could be maybe a warrior, but let's just say that if a situation were to be like that, if we would be talking about, it's like the word brave though, is that with brave, that for who's brave enough to speak up about something if we see something wrong, and if we wind up coming into a situation to where that if we failed a number of times and somebody else wants to go ahead and go into that same field, and knowing about, I'm like, really about that ways to how to improve, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that for who's mature enough to turn in their assignments, and who's knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that whenever you took that class, that of course that they didn't have you, or they had you do this or that, and then they have me doing it, but doing something that's a little bit more difficult from what you had to do, and that type of stuff. But let's just say that knowing about for who's brave enough to really to speak up about the mistakes, and as well as knowing about for how that they were managed. And let's just say that from about 3 years ago, that a number of things that maybe a student or somebody on a job that wound up failing something, if it's failed to respond to a message, or failed to mail a letter or something like that, some important paperwork, and just knowing about for really who's brave enough to speak up about the fact about if it's the truth of the matter is, or if it's knowing about for who's brave enough to go ahead and handle the situation to where that knowing about yeah, well you failed, and knowing to be honest with them, maybe the reason why that they did fail, but then on the other hand too, who's brave enough to speak up, and on the other hand too, they knowing about. And the way I think about though is that I hardly ever I'm hardly ever consider brave of knowing about anybody who listens to me or watches my stuff, and knowing about really who's brave enough to really to talk about their habits as well, and as well as knowing about the things that they had to take care of, and you didn't do it well. If you're not brave enough to to show up on TV or anything like that to talk about something, or maybe to encourage all students, is knowing that they're supposed to provide their pencils and pens. Well, you failed to bring a pencil, a mechanical pencil, to class, and write a paper about something, that type of stuff. Who's brave enough to speak up about a certain matter? And the way I would think about it, though, is knowing that really about the whole purpose and definition for word brave, and knowing about that a lot of times that some that may say that seems like maybe all teachers and managers, they say that you failed to do this, or you're not paying attention, you're not following the directions, etc., etc. But knowing if I for fail improvements between anybody say that there is a difference between it if you failed or if it was canceled. You cannot turn in the paper because of the fact about the meeting was canceled, or if it was delayed or postponed. You can't get stuff done if it was canceled, postponed, or delayed. but then knowing about, I'm like, well, do what you gotta do. It's like that. If it was delayed, and then knowing about, get the day from whenever it's going to be, when it's going to come, and knowing about whenever the meeting is, but then you have right here this example right here of a tutor. And let's just say that if you meet up with a tutor, and then you spend about maybe 1 or 2 hours working on something, and the next thing you know, it's like you turn in the paper, but then you still failed it. And I know with most students that this was right here was me, and then be getting all mad and frustrated over the fact about that you look at that grade report, and then you kind of reminds me of that that game. It's like for Bart's Nightmare, but looks at the grade report and thinking about, I'm like, yeah, well, we're not taking you out for no ice cream like we told you we were going to do because you failed the exam or something like that. But let's just say that knowing about the whole purpose about that. Knowing about, I am pretty concerned about my grades, and as well as knowing about, for how well I do, managing, income, paying for the bills, that type of stuff. And, with most students that they say that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, $6,000, to $12,000 is a lot of money to most of us. But let's just say that knowing about it, it's like for a lot of times with fail, that a lot of times it's highlighted like in red, like here, and then knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that whenever you fail something, and a lot of times that they say that, yeah, well, that looks really bad on you, because on your hand too, that you're not doing your job, you're not doing the important task, that type of stuff. But let's say the situation were to go by saying it's like that, yeah, well, maybe if somebody misplaced something, it's not that's not my fault, but anybody say that, if we were talking about fail, that for whose fault is like knowing about, I'm like, yeah, for fail, for whose fault is it? And a lot of times it seems like for fault right here, I go ahead and say right here for fault, something I think see here, trying to, I'm like, yeah, it's like late at night, but anyway, but knowing about whose fault is it for something that, for whose fault is it, and knowing about, like, really, that anybody that may say about it, a lot of times it's between the students, or it's like if it's the employees or the students, if something fails, and a lot of times that's whenever that kind of like the argument that kind of stirs, is that whenever the argument stirs, that it's like talk about like that for one assignment, that a number of things, there are a number of things that are required, for the work, and then for the task it is like talking about is like a number of things that could be required, as so far as talk about, it's like with the a paper. And then as well as that, maybe I can use a example right here of like a Claskio note. I can I just say Claskio note. Mike, I guess you'd say I made that up, but your Claskio note, as well as the pencil written document. Again, I'm just making some examples here. Pencil made document. So you have some examples right here of knowing about the things that and own to own a paper blank. Say for paper blank right here. For paper blank, but let's just say that if there's a few things that more likely that that a student was supposed to do while they were meeting up with the tutor, or if they were in class, and then the next thing you know, it's like well, you didn't do any of those, huh? You failed to respond. You failed to turn this in. You failed to complete the paper. You failed to submit the paper. That type of stuff. But knowing about, I'm like, really, that it's a situation where to say that, I'm like, well, that it failed because on your hand too, I tried to turn it in, but then that there was some problems with the connection, or that there was something going on with the mail service or something like that. Knowing about the stuff that just can't get done right away, and a lot of times that I guess that they say it's measured about time. That knowing about that, the lock. That the lock would not open because knowing about, you failed to provide the combination, that type of stuff. You got 3 locks here. Each one of them has their own combination, but let's just say that knowing about, I'm like, really, that if I had 3 locks right here, and let's just say if my job was to go ahead and assign at least 3 students to use them, and as well as keeping their stuff safe and organized, maybe if I would be sharing these locks with somebody else, and knowing about, Mike, you're supposed to return it also. One student that failed to return it, and I could tell anybody here that reminds me of a story a couple years ago of knowing about that if somebody were to borrow a pencil from you, and then like that they use it and then they failed to return it, I'm like, they failed to give it back to you. I guess they say that happens, but sometimes it's like tell the teacher about, but a lot of times it's like, well, then don't give them another one, and don't give it to them again the next time. That they, you let them borrow an eraser or a pencil or maybe a ruler, then they don't give it back. Well, that's your responsibility to get it back. Not ours. But in a lot of ways, though, that there are some school supplies, I'm sure, that they say that if somebody's going to let you borrow something, be reasonable as to give it back, if somebody lends it to you. But on your hand, that knowing about, I'm like, that with these locks right here is knowing about with these locks, that if you were to be sharing it with somebody, and knowing you let somebody borrow it, and it's like, so far as you're supposed to give it back to, but on your hand, that knowing about, I'm like, that more likely you'll get it back, and then if they ask to borrow it again, that type of situation. So it's like knowing about, it's like for the word fail, that more likely could mean a number of meanings, but let's just say that it's a situation where to go, like that you have right here, these locks right here. Each lock right here that has a different combination, but then on your hand, and knowing about that they say that, really, well, if you need help getting the lock open, and then what's the combination like? And well, I'm trying to think here what the combination. I think it's two full turns to the right, and then stop at 25, and then so it's like this one right here has a combination on the back, but these 2 other ones right here, which I tried the combination on both of these, and knowing about for how that they're unlocked as well. But knowing about, a lot of times that they say that a lot of times that's the student's responsibility to remember the combination as well as to bring the calculator, or the type of calculator that you need, most students that more likely need for class. But really, who's brave enough to speak up about the fact about really for what they learned about if it's a program or if it's an assignment or anything like that, and knowing about really that for after a situation to where that you start talking to everybody about something, and then talk to a few about something, and then like for what was missing the last time, for that situation to where that you be honest with a few other people, and knowing about, well, I thought that was very brave for what you did, for how you were expressing the feeling, and knowing about that for what you learned and how you completed the assignment, and then from the research and that type of stuff, and knowing about, I'm like, well, really, I'm like, do we know what brave really means between fail and brave? And knowing about that really, that there may be a lot of young kids, I'm like, boys, I'm like, whenever you're young, then knowing about, I'm like, really, that what does the word brave really mean? Is knowing about really that you had to be what you had to have superpowers just to be, a brave person, such as that, if you rescued somebody, or if you helped somebody with something, or, how, like they say that, I can barely help myself, and then somebody's asking me if I can help them, turn this in, or help them with their research or something like that. So in a lot of ways, that knowing about that, let's just say that that maybe a couple of times that we may have failed out of a year, and then 2 years later, and then all of a sudden it's like that now this person's asking you to help them with this whenever you didn't really have too much experience knowing about. You had pretty difficult times too in the past, but on your head too, to knowing about for who's brave enough to knowing about for how to manage that important task of that whenever we do fail, is try not to get too down and upset about it. Is to work out the situation, of course. And some that may say that that a lot of people will say that you failed to do this, you failed to do that. But then on your hand, and knowing about, I'm like, really, really, did I fail to try my best? Did I fail to write my name on the paper, or did I fail to put date or something like that? But there may be some things that maybe we not fail to do. We may not fail to do everything. We didn't do any of that. Well, you failed. But on your hand, and knowing about is like, you say another word is like, so far as it's like, how does that feel? Really, how does it feel to fail? Whenever you first get your grade report and you see an F on your grade report, and usually the F is between a score from like I can say for between 15 and 49 and below. And a lot of times it's like that they may say it's like you put a 0 on the grade report. And I remember that more likely that they say that some teachers more likely would do that, to where that if you don't turn anything in, and well, that's fine. I'll just put a 0 right in your grade report and leave it at that. But a couple of teachers that I did have before in the past is knowing about, like, hey, if you don't turn something in, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm just going to put a 0. That anybody that like really fail does not mean that fool or anything like that. I'm like talking about, I'm like, you want to be a stupid, stupid fool. I'm like, stupid fool, you failed the test. But on the hand, that knowing about where you failed to turn something in, that type of stuff. But for on your hand and knowing about, it's like if we talk about, for the number 0, and they may say that, well, 0 more likely could be, it's like for $6,000. That, well, you failed the exam, so we're talking about if you have like a tuition deposit of about $6,000, well, you got to pass that test the next time. But other than that we may think of is that for the word fail, though, that we may not fail everything, but then on your hand too, that just because we failed something, that don't really mean that we're horrible. It may be disappointing, which I would agree that tell anybody here that maybe once or twice I passed something, but then is it okay to fail every once in a while? It seems like maybe every time that we're gonna fail something. But then on your hand and knowing about, I'm like, really, that if you don't fail to try again, or at least try keep working on it, then I'm sure that they say the situation maybe get worse. So encourage anybody is knowing about that, really, fail does not mean necessarily, it does not necessarily mean that you suck, So if anybody say that, I'm like, really, that if you say that, well, I suck at the exam. I suck at the exam. I failed it so many times to where I'm just going to say that I just totally suck at that. But I'm like, well, you ought to know about the whole purpose about being brave enough to speak up about for what we learned about whenever we do fail. Do we learn about the same compared to whenever we pass? Do we know about, I'm like, really, that if the situation could have gone to where that we turn in our assignments, but then on your hand too, a few things that were missing, ran out of time, that type of stuff. But then maybe by guarantee, maybe by the second or third time, that we'll more likely pass it and just keep working on it as well. But talk about, say, for the for working on for fail improvements is knowing about that say talk to say if we're brave enough to speak up for what we believe in, and for what matters to us most, and knowing about that, really are we proud to say it's like we are confident for passion for great education. Talk about, say, for the fail improvements, say, kind of activity.